get a freaking job. And so instead I was doing like Uber, DoorDash, like doing all of like these like side gig work stuff that I could do.
Mm.
And what it did was it allowed me to make my business my priority and focus on that, and then make enough money to survive it. And
This is Unmasked.
Thank you for taking the time. You are a very busy man from what I've seen. You just got back from a couple of vacations, right?
yeah, vacations if you want to call it. But yeah, I basically just been living in some other parts of the world for a period of time. But honestly, it's very similar lifestyle to here in Arizona, just doing work and everything. So
Okay.
I always think of a vacation like kicking the feet up. So it was more so just like relocating for a bit. But yeah.
Okay. Where'd you go?
I went to Colombia for about a month and a half, and then I'm originally from Michigan, so I was back in
Okay.
Michigan for a couple weeks. I'm actually going back on Saturday for a bit as well. But yeah, I just threw all my stuff in storage and just been bouncing around places, kind of trying
Really?
to get out of AZ for the summer and just experiencing some new places.
So do you have still a place here, or did you pretty much get rid of it?
I got rid of it. Now I'm Airbnb and threw all my stuff in storage. Like whenever
Really?
I'm in Arizona for events or whatever it may be, I'm just Airbnb-ing right now, and then I'll probably like get another place, sign another lease in the fall time frame. But yeah.
So I'm assuming with that kind of lifestyle, there's not like a family, like wife, kids, all that kind of stuff that you have. It's
Correct.
It sounds like it's pretty much just you, and
Mhm.
I'm assuming you're in your 20s.
Yep, I'm 27.
27. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's like perfect time
It
then to
is,
be able
man.
to. Honestly, I feel like there's like a dynamic right now, especially going around social media for people in their 20s to have a very specific lifestyle and stuff.
Mhm.
But when you kind of compare it to history with how people live and then compared to everything, it's like this is the time we're supposed to be doing that shit. This is the time we're supposed to be irresponsible or making these drastic decisions on, okay, I'm gonna live over here, I'm gonna live over here. Like, 'cause, like I've talked to so many people that are like in their 50s and 60s and stuff, like, oh, I didn't settle down anywhere until I was like 35. Before that, I was traveling the world, I was going to do all that. But I put myself in their shoes. I'm like, oh, I'm 25 right now. I'm like, I couldn't imagine just not having a home base, you know?
Mhm.
Does that kind of like ever get to you, not having like an actual home base?
Not really. I mean, I've only been doing it for the last few months, so I don't have much
Okay.
to compare it to. Because before then, it would just be like little 7-10 day trips if I ever did go somewhere. But I like it, especially in this season of life, because as you said, like I do foresee, a family, a wife, kids down the road. So I just know I'm not always gonna have the flexibility and freedom to be like, yeah, I'm gonna go live in Colombia
Right.
for a month. So it doesn't really get to me now. I feel like it could get old eventually, just not having a solid home base place, a productive place to be from. But right now in this season, especially just because the summers here are
Yeah.
brutal anyway, so it's like might as well just kind of see the world right now. But I've been able to. That's something that's super important, is just making sure that you have a good workflow and productivity environment, regardless where you're at. And since I've been going places for a lot longer than like 7 days, I can really get in a routine and just do similar stuff I'm doing here, but just from somewhere else.
Was there a specific thing that triggered you wanted? Because you said you've only been doing it for a couple months, so that means that you did pretty much have the home base and stuff before that. I'm assuming maybe an apartment or house or something here. Was there something that happened that kind of triggered you to want to live a little bit more of, I guess you can say, quote unquote, nomad lifestyle of like not having a home, like a home or like a home base or something, but living more on the road?
Yeah, I'll say, like, when I first got into entrepreneurship, like when I first moved here 5-6 years ago, like that's the lifestyle that I wanted to create for myself. I knew that I was really excited and passionate about traveling, so that's eventually what I wanted to do. But like more of the trigger, I went to Europe about almost a year ago exactly, and I was in Barcelona for a while. And I was like, I'm moving to Barcelona when my lease ends. That's the goal that I set. Like, I'm moving to Barcelona when my lease ends, and so it was really on my mind, especially over the last year, that I want to spend time elsewhere. And then, yeah, doing all my research and everything, Colombia just made a lot more sense. It's way cheaper. It's Central Time, so you could still keep up with business and work and everything.
Okay.
And yeah, it just made a lot more sense because in Europe the time zone's jacked up, and then also it's more expensive. So Colombia just made a lot of sense. So that's where I went.
So how often are you kind of there for at a time usually right now?
In Colombia,
Yeah.
I was there for about 40 days. I'm likely going to be going back end of July. I'm not certain yet, but that's kind of the cool thing about it to me, because typically how life is like I can predict the next few months of my life, because like I do the same thing, routine. And so now kind of being in a space where it's like, okay, I'll be in Michigan until July 13th, probably come back to Arizona for a little bit, but then where am I going to be? And I honestly don't know. It kind of is just wherever feels right, and that's kind of a cool season to be in, just like bouncing around wherever sounds like the place to be.
Do you ever feel like the pressure of like you're kind of leaning more towards your late 20s of that, like I need to possibly be looking towards settling down or finding a wife, or I don't know what your relationship status is, but like, because I know especially just with the dynamic of today, you talk to anybody in their middle ages and stuff, and they look at our generations and they're like, I was married when I was 18 and had my first kid by 19. I'm like, I'm 25. I couldn't even imagine having a child right now. I couldn't imagine, like, I look back at my 18 or 19-year-old self and I'm like, if I would have had a kid at that time, or like married who I was with at that time, I cannot guarantee how happy I would be today or what my life would look like today. So I don't know. I know that obviously women have kind of a biological clock. So for them, I feel like there's a little bit more pressure to like start having kids and start building this life up at a certain age. Men, fortunately, do not have that biological clock. So I don't know if you kind of feel that kind of pressure, or if it's a little bit more of like, I'm just enjoying it right now.
Yeah, not really, man. I feel like, when God puts the right person in front of me, I'll know. So it's not something where I'm like forcing it or pushing pressure and like being needy in relationships. It's more so just like focusing on me, developing myself, building the businesses, and building a strong foundation for myself and for the future family that I want to create. So it's not really something where I feel pressure. Ask me again if I'm like 41 and single. I might have a different answer for you, but I still feel young and like I haven't reached near my full potential. So even the type of person that I'm able to attract, the more and more I evolve.
Yeah. You mentioned something that really sparked a big thing in me, and that was routines. Because for me, I've come to a lot of realizations as a self-employed entrepreneur now, that because I used to be in the 9-to-5 work thing of having that same, I was in finance, so I worked at the banks and stuff. So I would wake up, get to the office by 8 a.m., wait, count on the clock until lunch hit. Yeah, I got 30 minutes off, eat lunch, go right back, and then count down the day until the end of the day, same route back and stuff. Did that for like 6 months until I'm like, this is the most boring, unfun thing that I could think of for myself. And it's not to say anything bad about people who do that. That just wasn't for me. But on the contrary side, as an entrepreneur, I didn't realize how much structure I do actually need. It's not that whole dream thing of like, oh, I get to wake up whenever I want. If I want to sleep until 3 p.m. and kind of do whatever and all that, it's like, I personally go crazy if I don't have a routine, if I don't have like a consistent schedule, if I don't keep up with a certain type of thing. My body starts going crazy. My mind starts going crazy. I don't know what to do with myself sometimes. I'm kind of curious on the routine that you've built for yourself to kind of keep this ball rolling a little bit.
Yeah, it is interesting you say that, because I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs get slapped in the face with that, because it's like the side of entrepreneurship where it's like you get to create your own schedule and do all this stuff. That's amazing. But at the end of the day, it's like the business being successful is 100%. It relies on you and the work that you're putting into it and the results that you're creating. So you have to have some sort of routine in place. Otherwise, it could get real easy to just like not work or not do things that are going to drive the needle. Versus like when you're working a job, you have to do X, Y, Z, otherwise you're fired. So it's like being your own boss and actually like holding yourself accountable to those things. But for me, it's really just a few core things. One, just like when it comes to health, as far as my routine, and I won't say, like being realistic, I won't say I have like a perfect morning routine where I wake up at this time, I drink my tea and my water, and I do like it. It varies day to day, which I give myself that grace and flexibility, but still making sure that I'm doing my non-negotiables. So for me, it's hitting the gym at least like 3 to 5 times a week, ideally 5, but just
that's it. You seem like you're in pretty good shape here. Okay.
Yeah, just staying in the gym and focusing on the body. Also, a big life hack. This is over like the last year, but I really got into like cold plunge sauna, red light therapy. So I got to optimize pretty consistently. That's something in the routine that really helps. And then outside of that, it's just getting stuff done for the business, and also not getting in the habit of just working in your business and actually spending time like for business development and working on the company as a whole and making strategic decisions. So it's a combination of those things, but just making sure that I'm dialed in as far as my health goes in the way that I personally feel, and then in addition that like at least 6 to 8 hours throughout the day that I'm getting some very good deep work done, both like in the business but more so like on the business, like creating big results for the company.
Okay. Was there a certain moment that kind of triggered this lifestyle for you, or have you always been this kind of person? Because I know personally for me, it wasn't always like this. I didn't know really what routine was. My high school days were absolutely chaotic. I'd wake up at like 6 a.m., get to school, come back home, nap till like 9 p.m., eat dinner, play video games till 4 a.m., eat, sleep, repeat and stuff. And so like I never had that kind of routine, but then working in finance, I kind of built a little bit of routine, but it still wasn't like perfect kind of routine. But then like 2020 happened and all the chaos with the world kind of happened, put me into huge depression and stuff. And then after that, I was like, I can't stay in this slump myself. I cannot just keep myself doing this. I need to figure out ways. And like, I had asked myself the question, am I doing everything for myself that I can do to provide the best results for myself? Am I keeping up with my mental health? Okay, well, what does that look like? Am I in therapy? Am I meditating or journaling or keeping thoughts clear? Am I taking care of my body physically? Am I eating right, having good fitness, getting outside, getting sunlight and stuff? And if I couldn't answer those questions with a yes, I'm not doing everything I could. And so I kind of had to switch up. And then that's when I started learning about things like cold plunge and all that. And I know a lot of that, like people will watch me like, oh, another one of these guys that's
I know.
doing
It's
the
actually
cold
crazy
plunge.
because
It's crazy because like you look on TikTok or Instagram or any of these things and it's like, oh, a day in my life, and you see this kid waking up at like 4 a.m. He's in middle school or high school or something. He's like, a day in my life. And he's like, I wake up and cold plunge and then supplements and then gym and then this and that. And it's like, dude, no. I already tell by the way you structured this video, it's completely fake. So I do like kind of how you were like, oh, I don't have one of these kind of things, because for me, I'm like, as bad as that would sound good, it's just unrealistic for somebody to consistently do that unless they have a very certain type of discipline.
Which, you know, and it just depends like how you want to structure your day. And for me, I want to be able to have the mornings for myself and kind of like do what feels right that day, read a book, whatever. So some people it works best to have like a very strict morning routine, and some people it's more so like taking time for yourself, but at the end of the day, having the non-negotiables that you're making sure that you execute on. So what was the original question though? I know you were leading to something.
I think it was more of just like seeing what your routines were, but
about, because you asked like, have I always been like
that? Have you always been like that?
So I played college football, and that was honestly like the biggest thing that got me in that mindset and just created a lot of discipline, because like with football honestly was way harder than anything I've done in business and especially at the collegiate level. So just like waking up early mornings, hitting the gym, practice, film sessions, all that stuff. And then also you have school on top of that. So although it was around the game of football and just studying, it's the same thing when it comes to business. So just like keeping those same habits. So I did have it from football, but it like obviously being able to create my own schedule was a lot of freedom to where I don't got coach screaming at me. I show up to late 5:01 a.m. to the meeting or whatever. So it's just a little different of a lifestyle. But with that being said, I feel like a lot of those habits did stem from playing football.
Okay. I noticed a lot of athletes that I've talked to, that's where a lot of their like discipline stuff comes from, because you do have to build that lifestyle if you want to be successful in that field. You can't be like a slacker and stuff or getting cut from the team.
Exactly.
And you lose everything. So
and it's like it goes hand in hand with like actually football and film sessions and gym and all that type of stuff, but then also with school and balancing a job, to where like that was the busiest I had been in my life in like a very stressful situation. And that just teaches you a lot, because then when you actually get into business for yourself and you're able to maintain those habits but be working on things that are like moving your vision forward versus the textbook that the teacher throws in front of you, that was just like a lot more motivating for me.
Okay. So when it comes to like work and stuff, You mentioned that you had a job, so you're not one of those people that's like, oh, I've never had a job. I've always
No.
worked for myself. So you had a job. What were you doing as your first job?
Phew, man, I had some good jobs. So I had my first ever job was Gordon Food Service. I was like stocking shelves and like working in the freezer.
Is that
and
like a
stuff.
grocery store?
Yeah, it's basically like a grocery store. They also do like catering and stuff, but
Okay.
something like that in Michigan. Worked at Panda Express. I cooked a mean chow mein. Panda Express. I worked as like a golf caddy at this golf course. I worked at Craig's Cruisers. That's like a go-kart place. So just like a lot of these odds and ends jobs throughout high school. And then in college was kind of the big paradigm shift. So I got a job for a home improvement company. And this is where I like got my first introduction to like marketing and sales. And so basically we would have like a sales process. We would go to events and trade shows and talk to just like people walking around and walking by. And we would like set them for a confirmed appointment for someone to come out to their house and give them a quote for like windows or doors or siding and stuff like that. But the whole company was just a bunch of growth-minded people. So a lot of those guys today, like they all own their own businesses. So it was a very like growth-minded culture. We're reading books, like growing together, and then also like learning this marketing and sales skill set. So that was kind of like one of the things that like got the ball rolling. Where I'm like, oh, I kind of like this better than Panda Express.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I actually had a very similar job too. I won't name the company because I don't like this name blasting, but I had a canvassing job where I'd go door to door and be like, "Hey, I see you have a little crack in your sealant for this window." Like, I don't know. I didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah.
I just heard from my boss like, mention cracks in sealant, mention UV rays, and all this kind of mumbo jumbo stuff. I'm like, okay. So I go up and be like, "Oh, I see that your UV rays protection only 47 and it's supposed to be at 92 and that's going to cause skin cancer or something," or just saying
just
like
throwing things.
Yeah, just throwing things out there and stuff, because like you have to make, and like it wasn't for me to make the sale, it was for me to set the appointment for the actual salesperson to come out with the product and be able to do all that. But like, as gruesome as those jobs are, it did teach me about getting out of my comfort zone and knocking on doors. And sales is not for everyone. I personally am not a huge salesperson anymore. I've done anything from Windows to timeshare, and timeshare was a whole different kahuna. That was big mess in itself with trying to do all. I don't know if you've ever done timeshare or anything like that.
No.
That was an absolute freaking mess. Like, just absolutely horrible. But on the contrary, it taught me how to rebuttal people, how to be able to not necessarily take no right away, but also how to sell in the right way, because I was taught in the wrong way. Of like, okay, well, what's the wrong way of doing that? And this isn't supposed to be like a sales 101 thing, but it was like those jobs that I absolutely hated, but I was young enough to be like, okay, well, I'm going to use this as a learning experience and learn, because becoming an entrepreneur, regardless if you want to or not, you have to learn how to sell a little bit. If you can't learn marketing, you can't learn sales, you don't have a business. I know your business is a little bit different, at least with Arizona Entrepreneurs. It's not, like, I know that you have your little membership thing, but it's more of like an event type of platform where people can do that rather than selling like an actual service or a product, which I definitely want to get into a little bit more on all that, because I know I saw you on another show and you were mentioning Arizona Entrepreneurs isn't your first business. What was the first business that you made?
The first business?
Yeah. You're kind of bringing up something with the fact of like, there's your first business or there's your first business.
Yeah.
Because there's like the first business that people don't really know about because they might have flopped or something, but that was the one that really kind of taught you. So we'll go into like your actual first business and like your kind of taste of entrepreneurship, your kind of taste of working for yourself a little bit.
Okay. So I guess my first business that like I actually started was it was drop shipping. So I had a couple of different drop shipping stores, and it was in college. I had zero success with it. It didn't make us. I sold a couple of AirPods, but it was terrible. But yeah, so I started like one. It was like an AirPods, kind of like obviously some knockoff Alibaba AirPods, but selling AirPods, selling watches. Did not have any success with it. Actually, the AirPod thing. I had a couple of my teammates purchase the AirPods like from my drop shipping store. And so I was like, oh, dope, like we got a business going here. And realistically, like within 24 hours, one of the teammates came back to me. He's like, dude, they're already broken. Like, give me my refund. And I was like, damn, like all right, this ain't it. So, yeah, had those trial and errors, but like I said, that it doesn't really feel legit because I had zero success with those. Then when I first moved out to Arizona, I started a videography company. So that was kind of like the first like real go at it. And that business fell flat on its face. And then the one that you may resonate with, because my experience in the home improvement industry and knowing how to set leads, we had a fire process for like trade shows and events. So when I got out here to Arizona, me and my good friend Tom, we were partners on this company. We went to all of like the best rated home improvement companies. So we're like windows, solar, doors, like all that type of stuff. And we created partnerships with them to where they would give us a percentage of any deals that they sell. So we would go to these events and trade shows branded under our own company, talk to homeowners. And it's like, look, we have the best vetted companies here in Arizona for these projects. They would go out and give them a quote, and if they signed, then we would get paid on it.
Okay.
So that was we actually brought in some revenue with that business, and it was the first time we just did something there.
Yeah.
And so that kind of fell apart with like COVID, when COVID happened, because it was all events and trade shows how we made our money. But yeah, those were kind of like to name a few of them, but there's a lot of them, dude. Just try, doesn't work. Yeah. The next thing.
So you had a handful of kind of flops and stuff, which honestly I love hearing. I like almost hearing more about the flops than I do the successes, because it kind of gives a little bit more of a realistic standpoint. The fact that like you didn't just wake up in the morning, have an idea, and you're a millionaire the next day type of thing.
Yeah, it don't work like that.
Like, because I tried drop shipping myself. And I remember I found out about it, found out how to do like AliExpress and connect that to the Shopify store and do all that. And then my first product was actually Jordans. AliExpress.
Some knockoff Jordans.
Yeah. I didn't know there were knockoffs though, because like AliExpress had like authentic.
How much were you getting them for?
So the AliExpress, I was buying them for like maybe $30 or $40, and I was like, maybe this is just a wholesale price. Like maybe I'm just like getting lucky or whatever. Maybe this is just a wholesale price. I'm like, okay. And then later on, I figured out how to link everything to eBay. So I was like, oh, I don't even have to like market myself on Instagram like all these other people are. I could just literally put it on eBay. And anyone who's looking for like Jordan 3s or something, or Air Forces or something like that, they could just go on there and I'll sell them $80, which is going to be like half the price of what anyone else is. Yeah. And then I started getting messages from people like, are these authentic? I'm like, as far as I know, yes, because I didn't actually order the product myself. I've never owned a pair of Jordans, so I'm like, I don't know how to authenticate these. But I was like, as far as I know, my supplier says yes. And then I remember I sold I was actually in I think it was my English class in college, and it was that day I got my first sale, and I was like, that's it. I literally dropped out of college that day. After that first sale, I was like, this is it. I'm in business now. Oh my god! And so I dropped out of college that day and stuff, but then it just kind of kept the ball rolling and stuff. But no, that business flopped so hard. But okay, so you had your drop shipping, the event. I actually had an event company too that crashed in 2020. So see a lot of similarities there. That's pretty cool. So at what point, bring me to the start of Arizona Entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so I started that company about 3.5 years ago from like our first event, but as far as actually like just putting the idea out there, about a little over 4 years, because basically I didn't have like this crazy vision for it to begin with. It was more so the fact that I was struggling in business myself with the videography company, the home improvement company. And I was like, okay, I need to, one, like get around other friends and just meet people that are also building businesses and start to learn things, and also like mentors and coaches. I just need to surround myself with people who are on a similar journey as me. And because I was new to Arizona, I didn't have that out here other than my good friend I moved out here with. And so that was really the starting point of it. And honestly, like full transparency, man, it kind of just like, I believe it was a godsend because it happened so naturally, because I typed in Arizona Entrepreneurs on Instagram because I thought for sure there was going to be an account. I could go follow people, like start to make some new connections, and there wasn't an account. So I was like, all right, well, I'm at least claiming that. Yeah. And I saw the LLC was available, and then I just started putting out some content. It was just like, I wasn't treating it as a business. It was just like a side thing, but I was like, I might as well just like start to grow this account and meet some people. And then real quickly, I think a lot of it being from the name being Arizona Entrepreneurs, people would DM us and they're like, hey, do you guys have any events going on? Hey, what do you guys do for entrepreneurs? Just asking me these questions. And I'm like, well, that's what I'm looking for personally. And now I'm starting to see that all these other people are looking for the same thing. And so that was when I started to realize like this could actually be something really big. And then we started to put together like the membership, the events, like the first iteration of all that. And yeah, it grew very quickly because our first event that we hosted was in Scottsdale. It was right after like the pandemic, right when some of the mandates got lifted here in Scottsdale. So other parts of the states, like people are still in lockdown, but in Scottsdale we were just living. And so we had our first event, and there was close to 100 people there, but it kind of put it on the map because everybody was like locked up, and they're like, what just happened in Scottsdale?
Yeah.
And then so that it was huge momentum and just like people talking about it, like buzz around the town, which led in just to all the events and everything we were doing from there.
So I went to that first event that you invited me to, and the thing that was different though was it wasn't just like one of those events that just has like just random people that are curious about it. It actually had like different people from different places. Obviously, like there was quite a few of the same type of industry, like a lot of real estate agents, a lot of those kind of people. But for you, being especially from a different states, how did you kind of learn to market it towards like finding those entrepreneurs and stuff, finding those people? Because I know obviously like the name that could attract people, but like there's obviously very specific clientele and stuff that does that.
Actually, this was a great strategy. Young genius, Devon. So what I started to do is reach out to like some very influential entrepreneurs, similar to like how you do with your podcast. I would reach out to influential entrepreneurs and just be like, hey, I want to promote. And we had like, couple thousand followers. So it was somewhat of value for them to be promoted on our page. And I would just reach out and just be like, hey, I want to highlight you on my Arizona Entrepreneurs account. You cool with that? Whatever. And I would just put together a little highlight and like post it for them.
Okay.
And so that was like how I started to get my foot in the door with some of these higher level relationships. And it's so crazy because I like scrolled back not too long ago and looked at all those. And like a lot of those are like good friends and personal connections to this day.
Yeah.
But that was one way. So I started to like tap into their network because they were resharing stuff. And then in addition, like I started to build some relationships with these higher level people. But dude, I'm trying to think, man, because as you asked that question, it's like, how did I get like so many people there, but also like some very credible, successful people?
Yeah, because it's not just like having a bunch of random, very small time drop shipping college students and stuff. It's like there's actual like we own a multi-million-dollar business, or like there's credible people, and for those kind of people, they don't just go to any events. They're very specific on stuff because their time is money. They can't be willing to like risk losing their time or wasting their time at some BS thing. And from what I saw there was a lot of like return people. It wasn't just like people there checking it out, testing the waters. There was like, it seemed like there was people there that have been going for however long you guys have been doing this. I mean, I was hearing stories of like marriages and stuff even being built through that, or business partnerships and all that kind of stuff. So there has to be like a very strategic way to be able to actually be put under the radar of some of these more high-profile business owners and stuff. Yeah,
a couple things to that. So one, like building a community like this, it gave me the ability to like get my foot in the door with a lot of these high-level people because I had a way to add value to them. Like whether it's acknowledging them at an event, speaking on stage, like I just had ways to like bring in higher-level entrepreneurs into my network. But thinking back, like very specifically, like what was like some of the big pieces. So there was this one night that I met one of my good friends today. His name's Ryan Maynard. And I met him at like my apartment complex hot tub, and we were just talking. He was also from Michigan. He was doing lead generation for solar companies, so we had like some very similar backgrounds there. And he invited me. I think it was for the 4th, honestly. So that's trippy if that's like the 5-year mark or 4-year mark. But,
that's funny.
But yeah, he invited me out to like hang out with him and his group of friends who I hadn't known at the time. Now are all really close friends. But it was like a lot of very, very successful entrepreneurs. So getting introduced into that friend group and in that world, and then once I started hosting events, they all rallied around it and started coming to the events. So just thinking back on it, that was like a very big pivotal piece, was like
just meeting some random guy in a hot tub.
And meeting a random dude in a hot tub ended up becoming homies, and then from there, like he was connected with some great people, brought them into my network. But at the end of the day, man, it's just like a ripple effect. It's like if these 10 credible people find that value, they're at the event, they're posting it. Now each of them have 10 friends that are seeing it, and they're all, so it just like, it happens so quickly just because Scottsdale is pretty small.
Yeah. So with that instance of like meeting some random dude in a hot tub or whatever, I know for me, my social anxiety absolutely says no to that, especially because like the way I grew up was like, I wasn't a jock in high school. I wasn't the popular kid, the one that's always being social. So when especially like if I am like, say I'm in Tempe and I'm at a hot tub or something,
Mhm.
I see some other guy. Part of me wants to say hi, but the other part of me is like, he doesn't seem like someone that I would really. So he seems like this party guy that's
Mhm.
just like maybe a finance bro or something like that. I'm kind of curious just about like your mentality with like approaching random people. If it's like you're one of those guys that's like, no, I'm gonna say hi no matter what because it
Mhm.
is out of my comfort zone, or if it's like there was maybe in this specific instance a very specific thing like, oh, I want to say hi to him,
Mhm.
or kind of how that went.
Yeah, well, it puts it into perspective when you are new somewhere and you don't really have many friends.
Yeah.
And so that was like a different lens that I hadn't been in before because through sports and school and all that type of stuff, I always had like a group of friends back where I was from in Michigan. So being new here to Arizona, I think I was a lot more open to
Mm.
like new connections and relationships and just meeting people, making friends, meeting other entrepreneurs. So I was probably a lot more open to that even then than I am now.
Okay.
But with that being said, that's not necessarily a good thing. Like I want to constantly put myself in environments where I'm meeting new people every day because you have no idea the person you're talking to and the opportunities that can come
Mm-hmm.
from the ways you could add value to their life. So now with what I do by nature, I just meet so many people at our events through our membership, all the stuff that we're doing with AZE. So I'm always meeting a lot of people naturally through my company. But at the end of the day, I'm a very open person.
Yeah.
I want to connect with new people. But my capacity then was like, I got no friends. So I'm trying to meet people to where now it's like I have to keep my, and I don't mean this in like a rude way or anything, but I
Yeah.
have to like make sure that I have a tight circle because it's very hard. It's very easy to get pulled in a ton
Oh,
of different
absolutely.
directions when you're just open and happy to connect and do anything you get invited to. So I've had to get a lot better at like making my circle tighter and just being smart with where I'm spending my time and
Yeah.
energy.
I know that there can be definitely a big dilemma in your head of intentions with meeting someone too, because especially as someone who's a business owner or someone who's an entrepreneur and has something that they want to invite people to, you also don't want to come off as like a salesman to
Mm-hmm.
a brand new person. You want to come off as a genuine friend. I know a lot of times I battle in my own head like, how can I approach this person without trying to sell them something?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's just naturally who I am. Like I've lost plenty of friends before because they're like, dude, you're like a salesman now. You're kind of in that, and I'm like, I'm not trying to be. It's just I'm an opportunist. I
Mm-hmm.
like to take opportunity. I like to meet other people and see what could happen because, like you said, you never know what opportunities can come. Is there like a certain thing that kind of you kind of battle with doing that, or how do you kind of get around that whole thing of like meeting somebody but not wanting something? I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
It does make sense, yeah, and I think about that especially with like the higher level people I'm connecting with because at the end of the day, if I'm meeting someone at a similar level or whatever, it's like I genuinely just want to be friends. If we have good energy and whatnot, and I would enjoy hanging out with you, like I enjoy friends from that level. But I've noticed this especially with these like higher level people that are
mm-hmm.
very successful in business, to where a lot of times it's like, what value do I have to provide to this person? Where I feel almost like that it within the relationship they're the only one that can provide value because of how successful they are and everything that
Mm-hmm.
they have. So I notice it more in those situations than just like overthinking like how can I add value to this person, like how do I like continue to be around this person and for them to view me as valuable. And I think AZE does give me a way to do that, which was a big blessing because before, like I it's so funny, I look back at some DMs and I'd be like hitting up these influencers like, hey man, can I work for you for free or whatever, just trying to like get
Yeah.
connected with people. But now like I just have a way like, hey man, would love to have you speak at my event or would love to do something of service for you. So with that being said, navigating that, it varies, but I think it's really just about like leading with value and with genuine intentions of like, let's just be friends and hang out first. Because like all the people that I've done the biggest business deals with and like do a lot of cool things with,
Mm-hmm.
it all started from a friendship. And then it's like, oh, you do this. Now I'm 10 times more apt to recommend a homie where it's, dude, you got to meet my guy, Matt, versus
Mm-hmm.
like just someone I shook his hand and he threw a business card at me. And so right now for me, it's just being intentional about how you're building relationships and really not having anything.
Yeah.
Actually, this is probably the best answer I could give to that question. So Joe Polish, he wrote a book called What's in It for Them. And that's like a big paradigm shift for it, because most people are going into relationships and conversations like, what's in it for me? What am I going to get from this? But when you start to rephrase that and think, what's in it for them and how can I like add value to this person, it just benefits all of your relationships.
Yeah, because I struggle with that a lot, especially with having this podcast and especially with the kind of guests that I have on.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it is high profile people. A lot of it is geared towards those people who have found entrepreneurial success and something in that realm. And so like when I'm going to something like maybe a car meet or something where I know that obviously if some guy's there with his Ferrari, he's probably making money in some aspect. So I actually struggled that there was a car meet that I went to like a week or two ago, and the first guy I was approaching, like, hey, have you ever been on a podcast? And he was just like, no. And I'm like, would you want to be on a podcast? And he was like, I'm okay. And I'm like, okay, I got to kind of readjust. But then I was like, immediately, like, right after the interaction, I was like, I need to not approach with, hey, I have a business opportunity. I want you to be on my business opportunity, because then that's a whole thing with like, well, why do you want me on your podcast? To get my followers to follow you or something? And so, like, obviously it's a genuine thing. It's not like, oh, I have a podcast where I'm going to be blackmailing you or anything like that. It's a thing to where I'm like, we're getting to know who you are. We're getting to know your story, your business, and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, yes, it is a platform that I created and stuff, and I'm hoping to gain a following. So it's kind of like one of those things that you always battle, and especially for me when I'm meeting new entrepreneurs, is like, first thing that happens in my head is, can I get them on the podcast? And I'm like, I gotta take a step back and be like, first thing should be, who are they as a person? How can we meet? What can we kind of have as a mutual conversation? Like, we're at a car show. I like your car. Tell me about your car. So I started kind of leading with that. Like, tell me about the story about you getting this car, because I want to hear about, like, why did you go for this Porsche GT3 or something instead of another, I don't know, Tesla or something of like a similar value. So I've had to kind of reevaluate that a little bit. I do want to kind of get into some of these other questions and stuff, since we've already talked about, I know you have Arizona Entrepreneurs. You have other businesses?
Yeah, one other company.
Okay, what's the other company?
Community Launch. So that's been over the last 6 months, really, of building that company. But basically the transition there was with Arizona Entrepreneurs. There was like a lot of people that would fly in from other states to our events, or that I would just connect with on social media, and they're like, Devon, like, can you help me build this in X state? And I'm like, honestly, yeah, but I didn't have like a whole model built. So I was like, okay, am I going to franchise? Am I going to license this? Like, what's the next step as far as scalability outside of Arizona? And so that's how Community Launch was developed, where it's like, dude, I just want to coach people and give people the exact marketing systems and things that we are using to create results. And like over the last 3.5 years with AZE, I just looked at the numbers, and there's been like 6,000 people in person at our events. And so that was all done. Yeah, like word of mouth and everything is huge for that, with it being a localized community, but there's also very specific marketing strategies we implemented to attract that type of audience. And so now with Community Launch, and that's honestly where a lot of my time and energy is going, is like helping other people who want to build their own communities. And a lot of them already have existing communities like masterminds, networking groups, retreats, things like that. But we're just coming into their business, and we basically implement all of the systems and marketing to help them scale.
So it's just kind of teaching them of like, here's who you should be marketing to, here's how you should be setting up the event, ticketing, and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah, it's more the 3 pillars we really focus on. For a community starting from scratch, obviously first we have to get their offers refined, like exactly what it is they're offering. But the main 2 things are systems and lead generation. So we're helping them build out like their CRM, their landing pages, their workflows, automations, like their entire system to be able to run and scale a seamless community. And then also the front end marketing to bring in ideal prospects and people they can serve and that want to sign up for the different offers that they have. So it's a holistic approach of, some of them we're starting from scratch. Like a few of the clients I'm working with had no community, and we're starting from scratch. And then some of them, they just don't have systems, and they're not predictably bringing in new clients and packing out their events. So it's installing the systems and lead gen side of it.
Okay. And you've definitely found a little bit of success with that.
For sure. Yeah, that's the business that really excites Arizona Entrepreneurs. I love it. It's something that brings me so much passion. It's my baby. But with that being said, it's like from a scalability standpoint, it's not really something that like I see making me a millionaire, right? But it gives me the platform to change people's lives and to bring people together. However, the knowledge and everything I learned there, is what I teach within community launch, and that is really the like higher ticket opportunity where I'm able to like on paper be able to show a client like clearly the results that we provide, and they're willing to pay a significant amount for that. So community launch is the much more like scalable, fun business where we can provide like huge transformation for people.
There was one point that I just remembered that I wanted to kind of talk to you about, because it's a point that I hear from a lot of people that want to get into business, especially at a young age or something. But it's one of their biggest hurdles is the fact of like the 9 to 5 and then the 5 to 9 thing of like trying to balance work and that until you are able to make the transition to full time. Other people, I don't know what your situation looked like when you were out here. I know you said you were doing videography and stuff and all that. Were you working like a full-time job when you were also building Arizona Entrepreneurs?
No, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend the route I did. So whoever's listening to this, don't take this to heart. But the way my logic worked at that young age when I first moved here was like, all right, I could go get, because I interviewed for some jobs and had some pretty good job offers. It's like, okay, I could take this job, but then I'm working 9 to 5 every single day, and then my business and the stuff that I'm actually passionate about either dwindles away and I get so comfortable with what I'm making from this to where that just goes to the side, or I just allocate less and it's like a side hustle and I slowly build it up. So my mentality was like, getting a freaking job. And so instead I was doing like Uber, DoorDash, like doing all of like these like side gig work stuff that I could do. And what it did was it allowed me to make my business my priority and focus on that, and then make enough money to survive in the meantime, like whenever I had to make money. Granted, I was very broke and like struggling financially because it's kind of hard to support yourself with just that. But in hindsight, like I am grateful that I did that, because it's so easy for people to just, get into a job that's comfortable. You're making 70, 80 grand a year, and it's like, oh, yeah, this is what life is.
Yeah.
And so I just always had like the first few years where they're extremely uncomfortable financially, but regardless, my full energy and focus was on my business.
And what age were you doing like this Uber and all that kind of stuff?
I was probably 22 when I moved here, around there, like 22, 23. I can't remember. Yeah, probably about 22.
Okay, gotcha. So it was like probably 24, 25 is when things started taking off with Arizona Entrepreneurs and stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
About when I was 25, probably. Yeah, like as far as being able to like fully support myself from my businesses, it was probably around like 24, 25, yeah.
So that's kind of in the similar thing that I am. This is obviously, this doesn't make me any money right now. This is purely a passion thing that I hope to grow and everything. My main jobs right now, I do Amazon Flex, I do DoorDash, I do Uber Eats and all that. But I'm also in one of those positions that I support myself 100%, whether it's having my own apartment or whatever it is. I know some people, they have the luxury of like, oh, I live at home until I'm building this off, and I'm doing that to save up. I'm assuming you didn't have that luxury though. It was like you had maybe roommates or something, and you kind of just did that for a while until building up. So it kind of sounds like you definitely did. You didn't have that kind of easy transition of just like, oh, I didn't really have any bills to pay. I just did that. But it sounds like you definitely had to put that kind of work in, which honestly, it makes me feel better about myself a little bit, because I'm in that whole thing with like, oh shoot, how long am I going to have to do Amazon Flex or Uber until I am starting to be able to support myself? But it also depends on the business that you're in. It depends on everything. I mean, with this, when you have a business that relies on any type of media, I feel like those ones are so much more difficult to get popped off. Like especially something that's not like a media as in you're a videographer providing a service, but something that's relying on people tuning in to watch.
Exactly.
Because unless you are like a controversial thing and people are like, oh my gosh, look at this, it's so ridiculous, and then it's getting that kind of thing. Like I know even Joe Rogan, it was like the first 5 years of his podcast, nothing. And it wasn't, and that's someone who was already a celebrity and stuff when he started his. So there's a bunch of different avenues and stuff with that. Obviously, I know this has to be a little bit of a shorter episode due to just time constraints and stuff. We're at about 44 minutes. But I do at least one, maybe two of the questions that we have.
Yeah, you don't got to worry too much about time. I don't have to be back in Scottsdale for a little bit. So
Okay.
Up to you, but don't feel like rushed to cut it
Okay.
out. Yeah.
I do. So we're doing something a little bit different with your episode, as I mentioned before. So usually I have a little notebook here and some notes and stuff and trying to do all that. But I was like, you know what? A lot of times I'm in my car listening to other people's podcasts, or I'm just kind of like thinking, maybe just listening to music just about business and stuff. And I come up with this question. I'm like, this is a really good question to ask somebody who is successful in their own business field. So I just started like writing them in my phone, and I have like a list of, I don't even know how many, but no matter how hard I was trying, I couldn't figure out a way to fit that into the episodes that I was doing. So I'm like, you know what? We're going to do like a new little segment where I just have random questions, and there are stuff that I created, but some of them are business, some of them are personal, some of them are family related, or something like just random things, but it's all like open-ended type of stuff that makes you really kind of have to think a little bit. Something that's not just like, oh, tell me about the start of your company, as I'm sure you've already explained on 20 other podcasts or something. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a random one here. Now, the thing with this, neither of us know which question's about to be asked. I had you pick 4 random questions out of here just to kind of see. So if there is one that's like, it's going to hit too close to home, know that I didn't personally choose this for you. It's just a random one. So the first question is, there's always some sort of part of the process in which we don't like. In your industry or what you do, is there something that you dread doing, but you have to do anyway?
Yes. For me, it's something that I've started to dive more into, because I understand as a business owner, this is one of the most important things that you need to understand. And like, if you ever watch Shark Tank, they're like, what are your numbers? And when someone's up there babbling and they don't know their numbers, they get ripped apart.
Yep.
And so for me, it's definitely that. Like, the way my zone of genius is marketing, is sales, is the branding, is like building the front end product of what you're building. But when it comes to like the accounting, the bookkeeping, the finances, like all of that stuff, I just glaze over, and it becomes very easy for me to not keep a good pulse on the business and really know where the revenue's at, what's the profit, like what are our actual numbers. And so it's something that I'm making much more of a priority now, but that is something that I hate doing in the business, but it is also the most important thing in the business. If you don't know your numbers, you would have no idea if you're making money or you're losing money.
You don't have a way to pitch anyone. You don't have a way to keep track of growth. You don't have a way, like, unfortunately, as bad as numbers are for a lot of people, and I know you're not the only business owner that struggles with this. That's pretty much the number one thing I've seen from business owners, is like having to keep track of the numbers. And sometimes it excites some people. For those people I envy. But for the most part, it is the most tedious thing to have to, like, okay, what are this week's sales versus last week's sales? What is this versus that? It is the most tedious thing.
It is.
Luckily, I don't have to deal with that just yet, just because this isn't one of those things that's popping off. But I was thinking about this question myself, because I was like, if this was the only part of my job, I would love it. If I just got to come in here, sit down with the person, talk to them, like how a lot of these other podcasters are, call me in 100%. I'm doing this full time. But it's the fact that, like, I have a portable setup, so I have to set up everything. I have to make sure all the sound's good. And then, like, this is all a one-man team. So I record it all, I cut it all, I edit the entire thing. I have to sit there, and for the episodes that are an hour and a half long, guess who has to be the one to sit there through the entire hour and a half listening to not only my own voice, which I personally am not the biggest fan of, but just listening to the thing over and over again. And sometimes it's just really good conversations, and I get to, like, relearn, which is something I do like to do, is just, like, revisit the conversation. But for the most part, like, the amount of times I have to, like, scrub back and forth and, like, oh, I need to cut here. Oh, wait, I need to do this. Oh, wait, I need to do this. And, like, each episode will take me, like, a solid week to edit and stuff, just because I'm, like, I have to work full time, then come back home, and then editing an hour and a half worth of footage and stuff. And then I have started using some AI stuff. Like, there's some stuff with, like, doing clips. So I'm like, I'm not going to spend another 3 days trying to make clips and stuff. So it does, at least there is a part of your job to where I'm not like, it's not like, oh, there's not a single part of this job that I don't like. I love all of them.
No,
like,
there's a good amount of it.
Yeah. So the next question, this one's a little bit more personal for sure. What do you worry about the most? What is the thing that kind of hangs over your head the most? The thing that's kind of, whether it is in business or personal or social? What is the big things that kind of hang over your head?
I would say it's really like creating my full potential, and especially like just creating a really strong foundation for my future family, because I've just started. What put it into perspective is some of my really close friends, they're starting to have kids and all that type of stuff, and it's like, okay, that that could potentially be around the corner. Who knows what that will look like? But with
Mm-hmm.
that being said, it's like I want to have a very strong foundation, like have money invested into assets, and have money in the bank, be having cash flowing assets for my business that are making money. And so I feel like I'm not fully to the position to where I feel like very financially secure, and that I have such a strong foundation that if I were to like say I had, because some of my friends, like, it happened real quick,
Mm-hmm.
and so say I got a baby coming in 9 months, like I wouldn't feel that good about like where I'm at financially, and as far as like my position right now with my businesses. So that's one thing that worries me, but it's I don't want to say worry from like a pessimistic mindset, but it's just
Mm-hmm.
something that's always on my mind and is honestly a big driver for me. But it's just creating a very strong foundation, because it's easy when it's like I'm just thinking about myself and my own well-being, but then when you start to think about like legacy and building a family, it's like, damn, I gotta boss up and get
Yeah.
in a better spot. So I would say that would probably be the biggest thing that I think about.
Okay.
Because sorry, just to finalize the thought,
Yeah.
it's like I know I only have however long, say it's 3 years, but to get in a very good position. And so with that being said, like I just feel like being 27, having 6,000 people at our events, and like the results that I have created are amazing, but at the same time I feel like I'm not to the point of where I want to be. And what worries the most is not reaching my full potential, and like being 32 years old or whatever the age is,
Yeah.
and being like, this was not what I was thinking. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Do you have like a specific number in your head of like, if I can start making this every month, then I will be at that financial security point? Because like for me, obviously from an outside perspective, you look at like your social media and stuff, and this is one of the reasons why I created this whole thing is,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the whole concept of this whole unmasked thing. Because you look at like a profile like yours and traveling so much
Mm-hmm.
and able to work for yourself and stuff, and you're like, oh, this guy's making easy, probably like 6 figures a year,
Mm-hmm.
doing all this kind of stuff, living this life. But like talking to you, obviously everyone has their own version of financial security. Everyone
Mm-hmm.
has their own version of what that looks like. Like, oh, I'm not gonna be financially secure until I'm a millionaire.
Yeah.
Other people like, dude, if I'm at least making enough to pay rent,
Mm-hmm.
I'm financially secure. Or some people are a little bit more of along the lines of, if I have 3 months worth of stuff or 3 months worth of bills saved up,
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm financially secure.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the big question is like, what does that financial security? How will you know that you've reached that for yourself?
For me, it's really just cash flowing assets. So it's less about like a specific number and more just knowing that my lifestyle. And so right now I can only do it based off my lifestyle. But then as I have a family and kids and stuff, that number just goes up and up. And so, for example, for me, like I have, even with traveling and stuff, 5, 6 grand a month, which is typically what I make, but it doesn't, that won't support a family is what I'm getting across.
Yeah.
And that's also not, that is still earned income. It's not passive income. And so like a big paradigm shift for me was the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and investing into assets, acquiring assets that pay you over time. And so I just kind of feel like I'm behind in what I originally thought when I read that book in sophomore year of college. Like I figured I'd be having some real estate properties and have things that are paying me every single month, to where I know like literally whether I lift a finger or not, like $10,000 is coming in this month.
Right.
And that's like more so the kind of what I mean as far as the stability that I want to get to. Because with Arizona Entrepreneurs and Community Launch, like we might have 1 month where between the companies, we make 30,000, and then it goes down, and so it's so much of like a roller coaster with finances is typically how business goes, unless you're just like a retaining service. And because of that, it's hard to like, it's hard to predict you like what you're making every single month. So I just want very sustainable cash flow coming in every month, and having assets that I know like it just gives you a cushion. So,
and I feel like to kind of bounce off of that as well, with like even doing like 5 or 6,000, 10 years ago that would have been more than enough to support a family. But having to adjust, like when you're reading something like Rich Dad Poor Dad, that wasn't written in the last 10 years. That's a little bit of an older book.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're looking at income, it's like, oh, like that much, like, oh, that's how much we make as a family. And the thing is, like, it depends on the area that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Phoenix, inflation's definitely hitting really hard, and especially like if you live in the Scottsdale area, rent itself is going to be like literally almost 50% of your income at that point.
Yeah.
So kind of having to readjust where it's like in California, I think it's like in order to even live on your own, minimum like $80,000 a year that you have to be making.
Ridiculous.
So it depends on a lot of different aspects. So
yeah. And the way to look at it too is like all the lifestyle that you want to create. Even just saying 5 years from now, I got a beautiful home, 3 kids, a wife, all that stuff. Like, that might be a $25,000 a month lifestyle, and then you have to have like stuff to support that. So yeah, for me, it's really just about like creating cash flowing assets, and like having just very sustainable, predictable income coming in versus it not feeling stable.
That makes sense. Okay, this one. Oh, I like this one. I'm actually happy that you chose this one. Do you ever deal with FOMO? And if you do, how do you kind of deal with it? Do you know what FOMO is?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Honestly, not really. I used to a lot, to where, I feel like more so when I moved here, to where I always just wanted to be at the thing or where the people are at and stuff. But I've enjoyed isolation over the last like year and a half. It was when I signed because I had lived with a roommate the first like 3 years, one of my close friends still to this day. But when I got my own place like a year and a half ago, like, I almost turned into a hermit, where I was like out a lot less, hanging out with groups a lot less, stuff like that. And so it's interesting because like when I first moved here, I wanted to be at everything, and I did have FOMO. But now in this stage of my life, like I have enjoyed, and when I say isolation, it's not like I'm just not talking to anybody, but I'm just like I'm a lot more happy like kicking it at home tonight, or like and not being where everybody else is at. So I don't really struggle with it much anymore. It's more so just like, what does Devon want to do?
Yeah.
And just doing more like based on what I do versus like, I could have done that.
Well, I think especially for someone like you, it would be less of a thing today because of how much you've possibly done. That's just from my outside perspective, with being able to have met so many people, being part of all these groups. Like you said, now you have to downgrade or like downsize your circle a little bit. That usually happens when you've, or at least in my experience, have put too much on your plate, have put too many people in, people are pulling you this way and this way. Like at first I was dealing with FOMO really bad, but lately I'm like, I am so busy now, I don't have time to do FOMO because I'm doing so many different things that I'm like, even last night, I'm like, I'm craving to just be at home. I'm craving to just like not be around people for a little while. I've been doing so much, even if I'm not doing my day jobs, if I've had like 4 guests, one after another, maybe an event or something, there's that whole feeling like, okay. But then I also look at my early 20s, and I look at that time, I'm like, I shouldn't have FOMO. I've done so much. But I think it just depends on your lifestyle, what your priorities are. Big thing, like, do you spend a lot of time on social media?
A good amount, yeah.
Like scrolling through Instagram and stuff.
I mean,
like
I try to not doom scroll, but I can't say I never do.
Because I tend to see a trend with like people that deal a lot with FOMO are those who scroll a lot on social media, because you're looking at all these things, like especially if you're younger, you're looking at all these friends that are like, oh, at the lake or at this party or at this concert and stuff, like, oh man. So usually the people that I talk to that like don't really struggle with FOMO are the ones that like, I'm on my phone like once a day for like an hour. Otherwise, like you look at their screen time and it says like 59 minutes, and I'm like, that's like enough time to like maybe do one phone call. Like, how are you not on your phone at all? So that's an interesting, though, the fact that like you do go on social media, but you don't really do it with the FOMO. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic there.
I did, a more relevant, useful example of the FOMO that I did kind of experience it, but reshifted it in my mind. When I was in Colombia, my good friend that I was out there with, he's back from South America now, but he stayed for another like couple months after I left. And so I was like, man, I want to stay in Colombia. Like, I was kind of hurt that I had to leave.
Yeah.
But I was flying out from there to go back to Michigan, and I was like, that was the first initial thought, was like, damn, I don't want to leave yet. But then when I thought about it, it's like, dude, I'm going to be back in Michigan, see all my homies, the green grass, summertime in Michigan, even if it's not the most desirable situation, but just to be where your feet are and realize, like, I could either wish that I was there or be grateful for being where I'm at now. But no, yeah. So with that being said, it was like an interesting reframe in my mind, because the first thought was like, damn, I wish I could stay here. But then I was like, dude, like wherever I'm at in the world is dope. It's just literally just what you make of the experience.
I like that though, because one of the ways that I started battling FOMO was realizing, like, yeah, I've been to some of those parties, I've been to some of those things. What are my feelings when I'm actually there? Am I actually having this time of my life that people are posting out or posting about on social media, or like the movies are portraying and stuff? Because I was talking to this girl that she was from, I think she's from some other country or something, but she saw the college experience in the American movies, and she was like, boom, and that's why she joined a sorority and stuff. And then she's like, it's not like that at all. I'm like, yeah, Hollywood tends to kind of portray those kinds of things, but for me, one of the things that I was kind of doing to kind of battle it is like putting myself in the perspective, like, okay, say I did go to this party, or say I did go to this nightclub. When I've been in the past, what is it like? Am I on my phone? Am I bored? Am I just trying to prove a point? Like, am I actually having fun? And most of the time, just the kind of person I am, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to pick up as many chicks as I can at the bar. I'm not the kind of guy that's being Mr. Party Animal and stuff. I'm usually kind of low key, especially when I'm out and stuff. Maybe that's just because I'm getting older, but that's, I don't know. But in those situations, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I wasn't even really having fun. Why do I feel this feeling when I know for a fact that if I was in that situation, I don't even know I would be having the time of my life. I'd be looking around, maybe have my fight or flight response happening with all these like alpha dudes around me and stuff, trying to do this, like having these like protector instincts, depending if I'm there with other female friends or something. Like it was kind of just realizing of like, I've been in those situations, boom, and kind of reminding myself like, I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that's the way I deal with it. I don't know if like you have different ways of like, if your homie was like, yo bro, I've been having a lot of FOMO lately, I've been seeing that you're traveling to these countries and stuff and doing all that. Like, if he were to approach you, what would you tell him to be able to like, don't even trip?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I feel like it's seasons too, because like not every season is like so cool, like, you know what I mean. And like a perfect example of that was when I signed my lease here in Arizona. I still had the rest of the football season to finish out, and it was like winter football essentially. And so we like just got practices, and it's cold out, it's gloomy, it's depressing, and I knew at the end of the tunnel was me moving to Arizona, and I wasn't playing for another year, so like the rest of football didn't necessarily mean much at the end. And so I just remember through that time just feeling like super low about like where I was. And the reason I say that is because I know not every season or situation that you're in feels like super exciting, like, oh, this is cool. So at the end of the day, it's just realizing that there are seasons of life, and not every season's going to be like out and about at parties, traveling, doing cool stuff, and having to be okay with that. And just like I said, being where your feet are and being able to be grateful for the moment that you're in. Because if you're constantly like wishing you were somewhere else, or, you know, thinking in the future, in the past, like you're just missing the true gift of life, which is the present.
Absolutely. And that's another issue that I have. That's a whole different topic of like being present and stuff, especially as someone who their career relies on the ability to see into the future a little bit and predict. I'm trying to see which one I did. Oh, I don't know what your family relationship looks like, but this one is, what is the biggest thing that your family taught you?
So my mom definitely was. So I grew up with my dad wasn't there growing up, and my mom was very much, where I got my vision from, I think, came a lot from my mom, because she was always the one that would like tell me to believe in myself, believe in my dreams, anything that I want to do in life, that I can do it. And so she definitely instilled a lot of that in me, just to like go after what I truly want in life, which at first was football and then transition into business. So that was a big one. In addition, I'll give you a more of a controversial one, because this is advice that she gave me that served me at the time that I don't think serves me as much anymore. And so whenever I had like teammates and stuff who were just extremely cocky, you know, throwing the baseball bat, spiking the football, just being like cocky, she would always tell me like, Devin, you be humble. Like, do not be cocky, you be humble. And so I always growing up was a very humble person, even when I like overachieved in sports and stuff, to where I was just humble, no big deal, just, cool about it versus being like, I'm that guy. And so I noticed like how that has not served me in business, to where even if I have a great opportunity, or even like talking about Arizona entrepreneurs where someone's like, what you do? Oh yeah, I got a networking group or whatever, to where it's like, it's way cooler than that, but I just downplay it because I'm trying to be humble and not make another person feel like I'm trying to like big dog them or be cocky in any way. So that was something that my mom definitely instilled in me. So I was always a very humble person, but in the business world, you got to be able to very confidently explain the value that you have as a person, as well as your business and everything that you're doing. So that was something that I'm, continuing to relearn, like to still be assertive and confident in what I can do and what I can provide, but also not being like a cocky douchebag.
Which is a very big thing to kind of, you have to find the fine line with that, because a lot of people, they don't like that cocky guy. They don't like that guy that's like, oh yeah, I run a multi-million-dollar community and stuff, and if you're not here, then you're not anything and all that, which I find there's a lot of successful people that kind of downplay it because of the stigmas of like, you don't want to be that guy that's flashy. You don't want to be that guy that's trying to impress everybody and stuff, because a lot of people know, especially these days, it's just a front. It's literally like you're showing your insecurities at that point. And people are like, why are you trying to do all this? But at the same time, like you said, you want to show the value. You want to show what you've done, which I guess that can kind of depend on who you're talking to. If you're talking to someone that you're trying to pitch or that you're trying to go into business, yes, show value in it. But if it's just like someone that you're just meeting and stuff, it can be tricky to over accentuate yourself, because then that might attract them to be like, oh, I need to get in a circle with this guy because this is what he's accomplished. And if he's accomplished this, then maybe he can bring me in. So there's so many fluctuations of like, when do you become humble versus when do you show your abilities, and when do you show how big what your stuff actually is,
I saw this done so beautifully in person, and I won't name drop or anything, but it was at this like really high level mastermind that I was at, and there was one of the speakers who's worth millions and millions of dollars, like extremely successful, that a lot, like pretty much everybody in the room knew. But we were at a table, and there was another guy that he was talking to, and I just like observed this conversation. And so he had asked, he's like, oh, like, are you familiar with my work and what I do and everything? And the guy's like, no, like, I don't know who you are. And so it was like, now it's like, what does he say from here? And I remember just latching onto that conversation. And I don't remember it word from word, but just how smoothly he was able to, like, with conviction and confidence, but not being cocky at all, be like, I've done this, this, and this. Like, this is my zone of genius. I have a nonprofit. We do this, X, Y, Z. And just explain who he was as a person. It was interesting to just watch the other guy be like his guard just go down, like, oh my gosh, like you're somebody extremely, but it was just like cool to see him like lay out his assertiveness and confidence of what he is, what he's done, all the results that he's created, but doing it in a way that just seemed so natural and friendly and cool, to where it didn't seem cocky. And I was just like, I want to be able to do that, because I'm always the one to downplay.
You just go in, it's got a little thing, 6,000 people, thing, no biggie. I mean, I support myself no bit. I get it. We mentioned the word success quite a bit in here. I'm usually careful now to mention the term success or anything like that because of this question. And this is usually like, this is the final question that I ask everybody because of how different everyone's responses are depending on what industry they're in, how they grew up, everything. For you, what is your true definition of success? And if you haven't already achieved it, what needs to happen in your life for you to feel like you've achieved it?
I feel like true success is ultimate like peace and happiness in your own life. So whether that's as like in this stage of my life as a single person or with a family, with a wife, like it is true peace and happiness in the life that I'm living in, and just feeling abundance and expansive. And like a lot of entrepreneurs, when you are in the survival state to where it's like, I got to close this deal to pay my rent this month, it's very hard to like see the world up here, like this abundant view, because you're just worried about paying your bills and like and you're in survival mode. So much of my entrepreneurial journey has been survival mode and just grinding, which you have to as an entrepreneur. But for me, success is just ultimate peace, happiness with my life, the direction of where I'm going. I'm on my purpose. I'm on my mission, and being able to enjoy the finer things in life. Like that's something that I never had as a kid. And less like material things for me, it's always been experiences. So that's traveling to the places, being with my friends, being with my family, and just being able to experience life from the fullest. And so with that being said, like it's hard to say, man, because it's not like a specific dollar amount or anything, but it's like I want to be bringing in enough money every single month that pays all of my expenses and then some without me lifting a finger, because I want to be in a place to literally like choose everything that I want to do and do it with passion and excitement versus like I have to do this business thing to support my family or to pay the bills. So yeah, that's the best way I could explain it, man, is like I feel like there's some very successful people like in some of the poorer countries that I've been to where they have no monetary success, but compared to some of the people I know here that are extremely rich, but their life is full of depression because they don't appreciate life and the things that they have, is like I would much rather be poor in Honduras, and I would see that as successful than I would a rich man that is overweight and is not enjoying his life. So for me, man, yeah, all is around financial freedom, time freedom, peace, happiness, and just spending my time doing cool experiences with the people I love.
I like that. It's a good kind of summary of all of it. And when I first kind of created that question, a lot of it I figured or I thought would be a lot more of like, I mean, making $1 million would be awesome or all of that. But it is honestly, I feel like there's those trends of just like, I don't need to be a billionaire. I don't need to be Jeff Bezos type of rich. And I've noticed like a lot of those people, they don't intend to be the richest person in the world. They just follow their stuff and it just so happens to come. The people that are always trying to chase the money and stuff are the ones that have issues with the money. And like, even if they are making a lot of money, it goes out even quicker than it comes in. And then it also depends on like the materialistic aspect. If you are someone who's like, oh, my thing is cars, I buy a new car every month type of thing, and I'll be successful once this happens. Like I've heard so many different stories and stuff about all of it. So it is refreshing to hear that, and especially with like the experiences and stuff. And obviously definitions change over time. Especially like when you have kids and all that kind of stuff. It's like, well, my version of success is making sure that they're doing something.
Exactly.
But like for yourself, and yeah, no, I definitely get that. Devon, I appreciate you coming on. It was an awesome conversation. I can't wait for whatever events that you have coming up. I'll definitely be there, and it's really cool getting to like network and stuff with a lot of those people. And I really hope that this business does take off a lot more for you, that you're able to build a lot more of a community, because I feel like Arizona definitely needs something like that, and a lot of other communities, they need a little bit of like a help to be able to push something, and you never know what could sprout for some of these communities. Like the next big company could sprout from these little things, or like a partnership of this, or so there's just so many things that are so unknown that you don't realize. But is there any specific shout outs or any specific things that you didn't mention that you want to make sure gets mentioned?
No, not specifically. Yeah, really my core focus right now in this stage of life is just those two things: continuing to build Arizona entrepreneurs, change the lives of people here in the state, provide them with the relationships, the coaching, the mentorship, everything to grow a successful company. And then outside of that, it's for those who are like really called to build a community, because like full transparency, when I was going through those business failures when I first moved here, like I was nobody to the state of Arizona. And the platform that I've created, the credibility that I've gained as a person, the people that I've gotten connected with, like, so building this community changed my life forever. But then also like you briefly mentioned, like the marriages that have come from it, 7-figure business partnerships, like some crazy results in relationships. So my purpose on this earth is to help people build communities around the world. And I just saw the impact of what Arizona Entrepreneurs has done. I just want to duplicate that in all these different markets. So that's the other big thing for those who are like really inspired about creating their own community and bringing people together. That's my zone of genius. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Heck yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you, man.
No doubt, brother.
It was good talking to you. We'll have to do this again soon.
Yes, sir.